Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, sometimes it's the smallest words in English, isn't it? They hold like the biggest power. They can make your communications super clear or hopelessly confusing.
That's so true. Yeah.
So today we're diving into something really fundamental, but maybe often overlooked. It's the fascinating world of English pronouns and how we use them to reference things.
Exactly. They aren't just, filler words. Not at all. Think of pronouns as these linguistic shortcuts. They stop us from saying the same nouns over and over again.
Right.
It makes our sentences flow much more naturally, and people get what you mean, like, instantly.
Yeah.
If you get the hang of them, your English really starts to, well, sound right.
Absolutely. So, our mission today really is to give you a genuine shortcut, not just to know what personal, possessive, reflexive pronouns are, but to actually feel how they work. In like real conversation,
Mhm.
we're aiming for those little aha moments, the
Mhm.
ones that can really shift your spoken and written English from just good to, well, great.
And what's really brilliant about the source material we're using for this deep dive, it's this English language learning module. And it's
Yeah.
built around actual real-life scenarios.
Okay.
So it doesn't just list rules. It kind of throws you into authentic conversations, practical exercises. It shows you these grammar points in action. It's probably the best way to really internalize them.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump straight into that first scene then. So, picture this. Chi Wen, a student, she's just arrived from Hong Kong and she's at her homestay in Australia. Her first chat with Mrs. Smith. It seems like simple greetings, but it's actually packed with pronoun power.
Yeah, this opening bit from the module's context listening exercise, it's really clever. Before you even get to the grammar, it has you thinking about household chores.
Ah, right.
So immediately your brain starts connecting actions to people like who cooks dinner, who
Yeah.
does the laundry, and that's the perfect setup for needing pronouns, right?
Yeah.
You learn the context first, which just makes such a difference.
Yeah, it grounds the language in something totally relatable, everyday stuff. The conversation itself, it starts off really warm and friendly. Mrs. Smith introduces herself. She says, "Hello, you must be Chi Wen. I'm Mrs. Smith, but my homestay students all call me Lissy."
Hmm.
Right there, you've got you and me setting up that direct connection. It's simple, but it really sets the stage for all the, more complex pronoun stuff later.
Exactly. And that initial friendly tone, it's important for the learner too. It creates this comfortable space where you're not like intimidated by the grammar. You're just
Yeah.
experiencing it organically.
Makes sense.
And speaking of chores, the module quickly gets you identifying who does what. So Mrs. Smith cooks dinner, Chi Wen makes breakfast, they both wash clothes. This isn't just about, who cleans what. It's about clearly linking actions with people.
Mm.
It lays the groundwork for clear referencing later.
So once that everyday context is kind of set in your mind, the module then hits you with a listen again and fill in the gaps exercise. And this is where it gets really insightful, I think, because it forces your ear to pick out the exact pronouns that make the conversation flow naturally. It's an active listening challenge, really.
It really is, yeah. You're not just passively taking it in, you're actively um, constructing the sentences. So take one of the first lines. Mrs. Smith says, "I can introduce you to a friend of mine, Yiling."
Okay.
So here, you is the object receiving the action, right? And mine is a possessive pronoun. It just beautifully replaces my friend to avoid sounding clumsy, assuming we already know she's talking about a friend. That's efficiency right there.
That makes perfect sense. It's all about being concise. And then there's, I know she's really enjoying herself here in Australia. I sometimes stumble on when to use herself versus just her. What's the trick there?
That's a classic one. It trips a lot of people up.
Yeah.
The key thing is that herself is reflexive. It's because the subject of the verb, she, in this case, is also the object of the action. She's enjoying herself. She's not enjoying someone else.
Ah, I see.
The action sort of reflects back onto the doer. Another example from the dialogue is Mrs. Smith saying, "Now, I have had a lot of students staying with me over the years. Here, me is just the object of the preposition with. It's with me, never with I. Simple as that."
Okay, so it's about that subject-object relationship. Got it. And this next example is brilliant for showing how different pronouns work together. First of all, my husband and I want everyone to feel at home, so we treat everyone like they're a member of our own family.
Hmm.
You've got I as part of the subject, then we as the collective subject, and then they're referring to the general everyone. It's such a quick shift in perspective.
It is, yeah. And that they, for general reference, is a really powerful tool. We'll unpack that a bit more later in the special situations bit. But back to the gap fill. Chi Wen asks, "Can I cook for myself?"
Right. Reflexive again.
Exactly. Myself is reflexive, she's cooking for herself. And Lucy responds, so you can prepare yourself a packed lunch if you like, applying that same logic. And finally, I expect everyone to wash and iron for themselves. Same rule, just plural in general.
And she Wen finishes that part asking, can I use yours to make local calls? That yours is so neat, so concise.
Mhm.
It immediately points to Lucy's phone without needing to say your phone again. It really is a shortcut.
It absolutely is. And what's fascinating here is how the module then takes these specific conversational examples and kind of nudges you towards general rules. It asks you to group the pronouns you filled in, like I, me, myself, and mine.
Ah, okay.
And this naturally leads you to categorize them subject-object, reflexive, possessive. It makes the formal grammar feel like a logical next step from what you've already heard and used.
Okay, so with those everyday examples fresh in our minds, let's zoom out a bit to the foundational rules. First up, personal and possessive pronouns. We know our subject personal pronouns, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and our object personal pronouns. Me, you, him, her, it, us, them.
Now, for any English speaker, really the core difference between subject pronouns like I, you, she, and object pronouns like me, him, or us is, well, fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
But the real insight comes from understanding why that distinction matters so much for clarity. Subject pronouns do the action, right? They usually come before verbs like, I only arrived last month. Object pronouns receive the action, or they follow prepositions like, staying with me over the years.
Right, get them mixed up and it sounds off.
Exactly. Your sentences become quite jarring.
Okay, so it's about getting that active versus passive role correct. Then we have possessive pronouns. Mine, yours, his, hers, ours, theirs. These are super useful for cutting down on wordiness. You just use them to replace a possessive determiner like my or your, and the noun it modifies, like can I use yours instead of can I use your phone? It just sounds so much more natural.
It really does. And here's a crucial point, a little warning flag that trips up so many learners. Its ITS is not used as a possessive pronoun. Oh, okay, good one. It functions as a possessive determiner, like my or your. So you'd say the dog wagged its tail, not the tail was its. It's subtle, but is really important for accuracy.
Okay, that's a really useful distinction. Let's talk about reflexive pronouns then. Myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, themselves. You touched on this, but I still see people misuse them sometimes. What's the core principle?
The core principle is actually quite simple.
Hmm.
You use a reflexive pronoun when the subject and the object of the verb are the same person or thing.
Right.
So you can prepare yourself a packed lunch because you are preparing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
They also add emphasis, like I clean the kitchen myself. That means I do it, not someone else.
Okay.
And when you use them with by, like by myself, they mean alone or on my own. So I clean the kitchen by myself.
And those set expressions are useful just to memorize, aren't they? Help yourself, look after yourself, enjoy yourselves. You hear them constantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just learn them as chunks. Now, an important distinction here. Don't confuse reflexive pronouns with each other or one another.
Ah.
That source gives a great example. The boys taught themselves English. That implies each boy learned individually, maybe from a book or something.
Right.
But the boys taught each other some new words. That means they were interacting, exchanging knowledge between themselves. It's about individual action versus mutual interaction.
That makes total sense. So beyond those main categories, the source points out some really important special situations where pronouns act a bit differently. It, for example, this tiny word, carries a surprising amount of weight.
Oh, it really does. We use it as a kind of placeholder subject, especially for things like weather, time, distance. It didn't always rain, or it's 5 o'clock. It doesn't really refer to a specific noun. It's just filling a grammatical slot.
Right.
It can also stand in for an infinitive phrase or an ing phrase. That's the real subject of the sentence. Like, it won't take long to settle in. The real subject is to settle in.
And I find it so interesting how it can refer back to a whole idea or situation, not just a single thing. Like Chi Wen saying, I am still finding it all a bit strange, actually.
Exactly.
That it kind of sums up the entire experience of being in a foreign country.
Precisely. But here's another crucial distinction, a really common mix-up. When you want to say something exists, you use there plus be, not it plus be.
Okay.
So you say, there's a good coffee shop near here, not it is a good coffee shop near here. There's signals existence. It often defines or identifies something already mentioned or understood.
That is a super helpful tip. I can see how people get that wrong. Moving on, you and we. They aren't always about specific people, are they? Sometimes they're more general.
No, exactly. They're not always specific.
Yeah.
You refer to people in general, everyone, like in Australia, you often eat sandwiches for lunch.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you specifically, the listener, but just people generally.
Yeah.
And similarly, we can do the same thing when the speaker includes themselves in that general group. We often eat lunch in a bit of a hurry. It's a way to make these general observations sound more relatable, more inclusive.
And then there's they. This one seems to have expanded its usage quite a bit in recent years. Apart from just referring to multiple people, what else can they do?
Yeah, they is really flexible now. It's widely accepted to refer to a single person when their gender is unknown or just not important, like I asked a student if they liked learning English.
Mm-hmm.
It's also often used to talk about authorities or experts without actually naming them.
Yeah.
They have changed the law recently. It implies the government or some relevant body did it. It's a very convenient linguistic shorthand.
Okay. And finally, one or ones. These seem so efficient for stopping noun repetition, especially with countable nouns.
Absolutely.
Like in the example, I do have a few rules. The most important one is one just neatly replaces rule, keeps it smooth.
It's all about keeping that flow going without losing clarity. So, okay, we've unpacked the rules, you've seen them in context. Now let's look at how the module really cements this knowledge through its grammar exercises. This is where you really start to, put it all together.
Exactly. Take the first one, anatomy of a bat. It's like a mini science lesson, but it perfectly tests your understanding of themselves, their, its, and it.
Yeah.
It really highlights that core difference between an action done by oneself, like bats wrapping themselves up in their wings, versus simple possession, like the bat has claws on its thumbs.
Spot on. It's that subtle shift that tells you who's doing what to whom and who owns what, really nails down those distinctions.
Then there's exercise 2, email correction, which I agree is maybe my favorite too, because it shows why understanding pronouns is just vital for making your English sound natural. You get this email that's just full of clumsy noun repetition, and the task is to make it breathe. For example, changing my course it takes up all my time to just my course it takes up all my time feels like such a basic but important fix.
It is. Or how is your course yours going? Where your course just naturally becomes yours. It makes the language so much more economical, more fluent. It's what native speakers do without thinking.
It's amazing how much more, professional and just natural an email sounds with these simple changes. Even Paul, he lives in the flat next to my flat mine. You replace Paul with he and my flat with mine. These aren't just grammar fixes. They're like fluency upgrades.
Absolutely. They really are. And then exercise 3, space exploration dialogue. That one showcases how it and their are used to sort of frame arguments or introduce ideas. A student might say, I think that there are a lot of different factors, establishing the existence of those factors first.
Right.
And theirs used so well when talking about countries or governments. Some countries want to show the rest of the world that they're successful, and they can do this with a space exploration program. This is just so much smoother than repeating some countries constantly.
Definitely. And finally, exercise 4, recycling debate. This one really pulls everything we've talked about together, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's like a masterclass.
It shows how all these pronoun choices, it referring to a law, they're for households, for general people, themselves for emphasis, how they shape meaning and clarity in an argument. It lets you express quite complex ideas concisely without getting bogged down.
These exercises truly demonstrate that, getting pronouns right isn't just communication way more effective, much more natural, and frankly, more powerful. They're kind of the secret sauce to sounding truly fluent.
So what does this all mean for you listening? As we wrap up this deep dive, it seems pretty clear that mastering pronouns is absolutely crucial for concise, clear, natural-sounding English. We've seen how they're your best friends for avoiding repetition and making sure you're using the right word for the subject, object, possession, or even just for emphasis.
And, knowledge is most valuable when you actually understand it and can apply it. So we'd really encourage you to actively listen and read. Pay close attention to how pronouns pop up in everyday English. And practice applying these rules yourself. In your writing, sure, but also in your conversations. Even when you're just thinking in English. It really is about making these choices feel intuitive.
That's the key, isn't it? The more you engage with it, the more natural it becomes. And for your provocative thought today, How might really grasping these subtle pronoun uses actually change the way you read or listen to English from now on?
Ooh, good question.
And maybe what other seemingly small grammatical points, like these pronouns, might actually unlock a massive leap in your overall language skills? Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and pretty powerful world of English pronouns.
We really hope you found some useful aha moments that will help elevate your English communication. See you next time.